For decades, the Ashwood High School had been abandoned, left to crumble after a mysterious fire claimed half the building and forced the students to evacuate. Locals whispered that the hallways were haunted, that the echoes of the students still lingered, and that anyone who dared enter after dark would encounter something unnatural. 8 friends: Jason Parker, Emily Collins, Sarah Bennett, Ryan Harris, Chloe Adams, Matthew Reed, Olivia Carter, and Liam Brooks didn't believe the rumors. On a chilly autumn night, driven by curiosity and thrill, they decided to explore the school for themselves. Armed with flashlights and nervous laughter, they approached the cracked front doors, the windows shattered and covered in grime, the faint smell of smoke and decay lingering in the air. The moment they stepped inside, the air changed. Metallic scent filled their nostrils and the floors groaned beneath their weight. The broken hallways stretched endlessly, peeling paint and graffiti covering the walls. Shadows danced under the weak light of their flashlights, and the faint sound of children laughing, distant, hollow, and wrong, echoed through the halls. "It's just the wind, or the building settling," Jason said, trying to calm himself. But even he didn't sound convinced. Emily shivered, hugging her jacket tighter. "It feels alive," she whispered. The group laughed nervously, but the laughter didn't echo back. Instead, it was swallowed by the darkness, replaced by the faint creak of a swinging ceiling fan. As they moved further into the school, the temperature dropped noticeably. Their breath became visible in the cold air, and the shadows at the edges of the hallways seemed to shift unnaturally. The old classrooms were filled with broken desks, torn textbooks, and chalkboards still faintly scrawled with lessons that hadn't been taught in decades. Chloe stopped suddenly, pointing toward one of the classrooms. "Do you hear that?" she asked. A soft, repetitive whisper floated out from the room. "Who knows the answer?" Curiosity outweighed fear, and the friends slowly approached. The classroom was empty, but the echoes of children's voices filled the space. Suddenly, ghostly students appeared, translucent and glowing faintly in the dim light, repeating the same eerie questions. "What is 2 plus 2? Who is your favorite teacher? Can you solve this riddle?" Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. Liam laughed nervously, saying, "It's probably some kind of projection, prank." But when he stepped closer, the ghostly students turned toward him with hollow black eyes. One floated toward him, reaching out with hands that were icy cold. He screamed as a force yanked him into the air, pressing him against the chalkboard. His head slammed into the wall repeatedly until the air left his lungs and his body crumpled to the floor in a twisted, lifeless heap. The others froze in terror as the room seemed to pulse, and the clock above the blackboard ticked backward ominously. Emily screamed and grabbed Jason's arm, dragging him back into the hallway. The corridor felt alive now, walls closing in slightly with each step. They called out for their friends, but the air seemed to swallow their voices. Chloe was next. She had lingered, trying to take pictures with her phone, when ghostly hands shot out from the walls, dragging her toward a broken locker. She screamed as the locker slammed repeatedly on her, crushing her body and leaving nothing but bloodstains and her phone clattering to the floor. Matthew tried to reach her, but before he could, a translucent student appeared from the ceiling, leaping down onto him, pinning him to the ground, thrashed, screaming, but his body was lifted upward, twisted, and slammed into the classroom windows until they shattered. When the others arrived, Matthew was gone, only shards of glass left behind. Sarah and Ryan ran together, holding hands and trying to navigate the dark, endless hallways. The laughter of ghostly children followed them, echoing from every classroom and hallway. Faint white mist began rising from the floors, curling around their ankles like living fingers. In a small gymnasium, they stumbled upon Liam's lifeless body, suspended unnaturally above the floor, his face frozen in terror. The mist thickened, forming into ghostly figures that reached for them, forcing them to flee again. Each door they opened seemed to lead them in a circle, past rooms they had already entered, past desks and chairs that shifted when they weren't looking. One by one, the remaining friends were targeted. Ryan tried to hide in the library, the towering shelves of dusty books forming a maze. But ghostly students emerged from the shadows, their voices whispering riddles. When Ryan answered incorrectly, a bookcase moved of its own accord, collapsing on him, bones cracking under the weight. Sarah ran from the gymnasium into a chemistry lab. Their ghostly students appeared again, holding glass beakers filled with strange, glowing liquids. She tried to escape, but the liquids sprayed on her, burning her skin with invisible fire until she collapsed, screaming silently as her body dissolved into mist. Now, only Emily and Jason remained. Exhausted, terrified, and shivering from the cold, they fled through the endless hallways. The ghostly students began to appear more frequently, their faces twisted in expressions of mockery and malice. Desks lifted and floated in the air, chairs flew, and walls seemed to close in around them. At every corner they encountered classrooms filled with repeating lessons. The same question echoing over and over. Who knows the answer? They tried to run past, but invisible forces slammed them back. Jason, desperate, grabbed Emily's hand and shouted, "We have to answer correctly. Maybe that's the only way." They found a classroom with an old chalkboard where a question had been scrawled in glowing letters. "Who is the teacher of Ashwood?" Emily shouted the name of their former history teacher, remembering stories from the living. The ghostly students froze. For a moment, the air grew still. The walls stopped moving. The shadows recoiled. Jason and Emily realized that answering correctly might give them a chance. But the danger wasn't over. One by one, the ghosts lunged at the other remaining friends. Ryan's screams echoed from the hallway. A ghostly figure slammed him against the wall, snapping his body in two. Sarah, trapped in the chemistry lab, was dissolved completely into the mist as her cries were silenced. Matthew, Chloe, and Liam had already vanished, their deaths grotesque and terrifying. Ethan, who had lingered to investigate the main office, was dragged into the ceiling, leaving only shattered bones behind. Now the only living people were Emily and Jason. They ran through corridors that twisted impossibly, past rooms that had never existed, past blackboards and classrooms that were empty one second and full of ghostly students the next. Every step was agony, every breath a struggle, as if the building itself was resisting their escape. They climbed broken staircases, ran down hallways that led to dead ends, and crawled through debris-filled classrooms. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper more insistent. Finally, at the edge of the building, a faint light appeared, the moonlight through a cracked window. They sprinted toward it, hearing the ghostly laughter of their friends behind them. The faceless students reached out, but Emily and Jason jumped through a broken window, tumbling onto the grass outside. Their lungs burned, hearts pounding as they scrambled away. Behind them, the school loomed silently, dark and patient. 2 friends had survived. The others, Ryan, Sarah, Chloe, Matthew, Liam, Ethan, had all been consumed by the ghostly students, each death more horrifying than the last. Dragged into walls, dissolved into mist, slammed by invisible forces, crushed, electrocuted by ghostly energy, twisted and suspended in impossible ways. The school remained, waiting, patient, hungry for the next group. The laughter of ghostly students echoed faintly, a sinister reminder that the building was alive and that the lesson would continue forever. Even as Emily and Jason stumbled into the safety of the forest surrounding Ashwood High, they could still hear faint whispers carried on the wind. Who will answer correctly next? Who will survive? Their friends were gone, and the memory of the faceless students, the endless classrooms, and the midnight terror would haunt them forever. The abandoned school stood silently, but it was waiting, always waiting, for someone foolish enough to enter again. For the night to return, and for the ghostly students to roam once more, and the loop would continue. New victims answering the same questions, facing the same horrific fates, until only the clever or the lucky survived.